So, I've been watching Scream 4 quite a lot recently, and it's one of my favourites in the series, so I thought I would do a review of it. It's directed by Wes Craven, of course. Last movie he did before he passed away in 2015, in fact. His filmography is well known from Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is probably his best known movie, certainly his most acclaimed, I suppose, to the Scream series, which began in 1996, and in my mind gave the slasher genre the shot in the arm it needed. And you can feel free to flame the fuck out of me in the comments for that statement if you wish. A little known film he also did in the 1980s was a TV movie called Chiller, starring Paul Sorvino, involving cryogenics, which is worth a look in my opinion. So, Scream 4 takes us back to Woodsboro, the town from the first movie, after being away from it for the last two films. The second movie is set at a college, I think it's Windsor College, and the third is set mainly in Hollywood, where they're making the third film in the Stab series, based on the original Woodsboro murders. Sidney Prescott, the final girl of the franchise, is back in town on a book tour, with an obnoxious publicist in tow, and the murders begin. The gore is probably as strong as any in the series in this one, which is kind of cool, and it's not gratuitous. It's done for a reason. Like one of the characters says, the killings have to be way more extreme these days because the audience has grown cold-hearted from the new wave of violent horror movies, etc., etc. The story's pretty standard. A bunch of kids get killed, leading to a showdown between Sidney and Ghostface. In the world of the film, there have been several Stab movies made by now, and we get a small montage of them at the beginning of this one, which is... well, it plays into the self-referential thing, I guess, but it's okay, but it just feels a little bit forced to me, really. Sidney's cousin Jill is portrayed very well by Emma Roberts, and the rest of the new cast, including Rory Culkin and Eric Knudsen, who was in Saw 2, do a decent job. A lot is made of the ironic elements of the movies in the Scream franchise, of course, and it is still present here, with the reference it makes to both the genre and even to the previous films within its own series. But personally, I tend to watch them primarily for the mystery element, I think, wondering who the killer is and even how many there are. I'm notoriously bad at guessing who the killer is in films, so it's always kind of cool to go back and look at the performances on a second viewing, and ultimately I just find them fun. The reason for the killings in the Scream movies always have a slightly mundane quality to them for me, and I think that works quite well. If you look at real-world serial killers, their motives and or fantasies they're trying to fulfill are usually either petty or totally crazy, insane and unrelatable, and I think that's reflected quite well in the series. The motive in Scream 4 is pretty much as self-indulgent a motive as you can get, and the killer in this one is one of my favourites of the franchise. Also, it's got one of my favourite characters from the franchise in it, a character called Kirby, played by Hayden Panettiere, who, incidentally, I was reading yesterday, has just confirmed that she'll be signing on to reprise her role in Scream 6 as a legacy character, which is kind of awesome, though she does have a sort of cameo in Scream 2022, where her picture is seen, letting us know that she survived. In terms of the tone of the movie, there is a slight difference here between this and the first 3 Scream films, with the historical element coming into play. After all, for these kids, the Woodsboro murders were a long time ago, and there's even a yearly mini film festival, Stabathon, where they play all 7 of the Stab movies, which are based on the original killings. The ironic elements are played up more than ever in 4, but it still manages to hold together in that respect before going off the deep end in the latest movie, Scream 2022, where it goes a little bit over the top, I think. The first time I saw the film, Scream 4, I have to say I didn't like it. Mainly because of Alison Brie's character, the publicist. But over time, I think she provides a necessary function. You know, she's kind of the one you want to get killed, which is a release valve that these kind of movies often have. And her death is indeed a memorable one, which is pretty cool. It's, you know, there's a bit of emotion in it and blah blah. It also underlines Sydney's feeling, I think, that she wasn't totally comfortable with the exploitation of her story. She wanted to share it, but I think the way it was being exploited wasn't to her liking, and she just wants to survive and focus on saving her family now, basically, now that this has all started up again. Also, what we see most of Brie's character represents written media. Sydney is in town for a book signing, after all. And as the killer declares at one point, no one reads anymore. So her death kind of hits that nail on the head squarely. The ending of the film happens over 2 locations. And I think it's necessary that, you know, you see how determined the killer is by the end and how far they're willing to go. And the character develops a little bit more over the final scenes of the film. The very end of the film itself is quite short and sweet, which, again, I think works well, as the story is as much about the media reaction and how they often go with the story they want to believe rather than the truth, as it is about the killer and the murders in this case. The media plays a much more thematic role in this one, I think. So, finally then, in my opinion, while Scream 4 is one of my favourites of the series, I don't think it's going to convert someone who doesn't like the genre into becoming a fan of it, necessarily. If you like the rest of the Scream series, though, and you haven't seen it, it's well worth a watch. And while it does have a slightly different flavour from the first 3 films in the Scream franchise, it's certainly better than Scream 2022, at least for me. Anyway, as always, and with all the above being said, please like, share, comment and subscribe, and all that other good stuff. Cheers for watching, and I will speak to you soon. Bye for now.